From the PEP Radio Newsroom, these are the stories we are following at this hour. A judge has denied the request to unseal transcripts from the grand jury that indicted Ghislaine Maxwell. Transcripts of the secret grand jury testimony that led to the sex trafficking indictment of Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, won't be released, a judge decided Monday. Judge Paul A. Engelmeyer said in a written ruling that the government had suggested the materials could be released publicly, casually or promiscuously, which would risk unraveling the foundations of secrecy upon which the grand jury is premised, and eroding confidence by persons called to testify before future grand juries. And it is no answer to argue that releasing the grand jury materials, because they are redundant of the evidence at Maxwell's trial, would be innocuous. The same could be said for almost any grand jury testimony by summary witnesses or others given in support of charges that later proceeded to trial, he added. Germany has invited Donald Trump, Vladimir Zelenskyy, NATO, EU leaders to a virtual meeting before the Trump-Putin summit. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has invited President Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the NATO Secretary General, and several other European leaders to a virtual meeting Wednesday ahead of the summit later this week in Alaska. The Chancellery said in a statement Monday that the talks would focus on the current situation in Ukraine with a view to the planned meeting between U.S. President Trump and Russian President Putin. It said the talks will focus on further options for action to put pressure on Russia, as well as preparations for possible peace negotiations and related issues of territorial claims and security. Europeans and Ukrainians so far are not invited to the summit Friday in Alaska. President Trump has announced the takeover of D.C. law enforcement. President Trump announced at a Monday morning press conference that he will be invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act to place the Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control. The president said he would be deploying the National Guard in the city to help reestablish law, order, and safety in the city, but he did not immediately specify how many troops would be used. In an interview with MSNBC on Sunday, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser emphasized that the city has been consistently driving down crime, stating that violent crime specifically is down by 26% in 2025 compared to last year. Any comparison to a war-torn country is hyperbolic and false, she said, in apparent reference to White House advisor Stephen Miller recently comparing the nation's capital to Baghdad. Bowser said that she suspects Trump's Monday morning announcement will be about surging federal law enforcement in the city, ceding that the president has the authority to deploy guardsmen, but she disagrees with the premise that Washington, D.C. is experiencing an uptick in crime. We're going to keep talking to the president, working with his people on the issues that are high priority for him, she said. If the priority is to show force in an American city, we know he can do that here, but it won't be because there's a spike in crime. Trump said he hopes other cities, including Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago, are watching the steps he's announced in D.C. and would take steps to, quote, self-clean up. He said that if needed, the administration would take similar steps in other cities and criticize their leadership at the local and state levels. Ousted FDA vaccine chief Vinay Prasad will be returning to the agency. The polarizing Food and Drug Administration official is getting his job back less than 2 weeks after being pressured to step down at the urging of conservative activists. Dr. Vinay Prasad is resuming leadership of FDA's Center for Vaccines and Biotech Therapies, a spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services said in a statement. Prasad left the agency last month after drawing ire of right-wing activists, including Laura Loomer, who flagged his past statements criticizing President Trump. He was also targeted by biotech executives and patient groups for briefly halting shipments of a therapy for muscular dystrophy due to safety concerns. But Prasad has also had the backing of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Under Prasad, the FDA restricted the approvals of 2 new COVID shots from vaccine makers Novavax and Moderna. That's the news at this hour. You can find us on the Live 365 app. Roku, the PEP Radio page at paequality.com, and on Alexa. Simply tell your device, Alexa, play PEP Radio. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.